And we're live.
All right.
Welcome, Najwa.
Thank you.
Or as I call you, Najo.
Yeah.
Because
Naji.
we're tight. Yeah, Naji, Najo, Najubia. I have several names for you.
Najwa with an U.
Naju.
Yeah.
I'm so glad that you're actually here today. I've been talking to you about this for a couple of weeks now, and I said, come out. I think we'd have a great conversation. There's a whole lot that I would love to allow you to talk about. And in some ways almost force you to talk about because I feel like you probably you're very humble, and I think for all the experiences that you have, you don't necessarily always put it out there the way that I think you are right now. So this feels like it might be a little bit of a step outside your regular
Very
comfort
much
zone.
So, yeah.
How are you feeling about it?
I'm good.
You're good?
Yeah, I'm
it's
excited.
It's a cool
I'm
studio,
excited.
is it
yeah,
not?
It's gorgeous.
Yeah, it's a beautiful
really
place.
Nice. Yeah.
Compliments of I was telling you about Jeremy earlier,
Yeah.
and
Did a really good job.
yeah, he had a blast putting this place together, along with the team at Aragon. You've seen the whole space. The whole
Yeah.
space, even outside of the studio, is really nice. So one of the things that I was really excited to talk to you about today was just your experience with mental health. I think it's a loaded subject, and it's got lots and lots of
huge
layers to it.
subject. Yeah.
More so now than I think ever. When
Yeah.
we think about what happened,
The pandemic.
yeah, what the pandemic kind of created in a lot of ways, and the fallout of that as well is something that I think is going to linger for quite some time.
Yeah, for sure.
So you've worked in mental health.
Yeah. So during the pandemic, I was actually working in a job where it was basically all crisis intervention stuff. So even before the pandemic, we were dealing with people who were, had no food, had no home, were victims of abuse, or were newcomers and had nothing.
Newcomers to the country, you mean?
Newcomers to the countries, yeah, sorry. So they were just arriving, fleeing their country, refugees. So they show up at our office and kind of have to figure it out with them. So there was that. And then also did a lot of counseling support for people that were living with anxiety, depression. And then the pandemic hit, and that went from like our normal day-to-day to...
In terms of your workload.
Yeah, in terms of our workload, the crisis really, really hit. And then people were stuck in their homes. Obviously, we all know that. So, for example, women who were already living with their abuser.
Mm-hmm.
Well, before he would leave the house, or she would leave the house. So they would have space. But now...
Not so much.
They didn't have any space at all. So we had to come up with different ideas on how we can still support these women, for example, while their abuser was around watching their phone or looking, just, they can't really speak about what was happening if he's right there. So, so there was a lot of daily crisis that we were dealing with. And people were dealing with the pandemic or just anxiety in general in different ways. And we had to support a lot. I
imagine that it would have been challenging on you as well, just in terms of like the team, not just your team exclusively, but I imagine teams across the entire industry would have felt strained.
Yeah, everybody who worked in the mental health field at the time would probably say the same. So that was the hardest part, is we were supposed to be supporting all these clients, and that is our job. And, on a normal day-to-day, that was fine. But now we were also living through the pandemic, just like
Right.
everybody else. And then expectations got really high. I mean, nurses, doctors, everybody too. But I think mental health was not as recognized, obviously, still as it should be. So that was really, really hard, and we're still seeing it now, how it's affecting people. And it was just anxiety, a lot of anxiety. And for me, I can tell you, and you know this, I am someone who also lives with anxiety. So I can relate a lot to how people are feeling and what they were going through. And I think that's an important part about my job and what I was doing, is that I was always able to understand.
There's this like immediate relatability with the people who are coming in.
So they would tell me something and I would be like, yes, I get it. I totally get it. And how do we work on this? And how do we what can we do? But then there's just so many tools that you can give someone to help them.
Right.
And then they have to kind of meet you halfway. But at the same time, when you're living with anxiety or depression, it's really hard to want to change or to be able to, because sometimes it's so consuming.
Right.
So I get that. But yeah.
How do you feel? So when you look at where you were pre-pandemic,
Yeah.
in terms of just your own capacity to feel for the people who are coming through,
Yeah.
as well as, more importantly, your capacity to effectively just manage this for yourself, I'm talking, not
Yeah.
just for them, but for yourself. How do you feel that was impacted with this massive increase in people that were coming through seeking help?
Well, for me, so the job that I was doing, so I talked a little bit, okay, so there was a lot of counseling support for people that had, let's say, anxiety or depression, but so I was there and I was their counselor, and we would have these sessions, and that's something that I was able to relate to. But then there was also, the people who, the women, let's say, who came in for that reason. So helping women navigate an abusive relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And you know this, but I've been in one of those too. So that was also something that I can relate to.
Right.
And then the other part of it, where I was helping people with newcomers, refugees and stuff. So I was born here, but my parents were at one point newcomers to the country, and
Yeah.
I was still a kid. So helping, I was, you see the children trying to help their parents navigate the system because they don't speak the language. And that's something that my brother and I did a lot with my parents, because we were kids, but we also had to, we spoke
Were
the
you
language.
primarily the English speakers at the time?
Yeah, my brother and I. So we
Yeah.
kind of had to always. My sister wasn't born yet, but so we always had to My parents eventually they got better at it, and it was good. But I can see the kids and how they're living, and I can relate to them as a child. They were living in not the greatest neighborhoods.
Right.
They were poverty. We didn't come from very much, right? My parents had to work really hard, but at one point we were, we were living using the system. We needed the help, and so to me, in that role, I loved my job because I was able to help people that were going through different experiences that I lived through, every day and in the past, and so that's the part that I was most passionate about, that I love the most, is what I was able to give back through and understand where these people are coming from
Mm-hmm.
and what they're going through. So
That's I imagine that would immediately disarm some of you mentioned anxiety earlier.
yeah,
I imagine, and maybe I'm just kind of speaking from my own perspective, but
Yeah.
I feel that would disarm some of the anxiety for someone coming in seeking help, feeling that there's this
someone
this,
that can relate to them.
yeah, there's someone there's this immediate sense of camaraderie because
Yeah.
somebody is sitting there saying, look, I'm not just telling you that I get it to try
Yeah.
to empathize. I'm telling you I get it because I was there.
Yeah.
And I do understand.
Yeah. So I wasn't allowed to say that.
Right.
You're not allowed to talk about
okay,
speak
okay.
about your personal experience. But I mean, I think the way your interventions are, the
Right.
way you understand
You mean your approach?
your approach, yeah,
Yeah.
with the clients says a lot. Says a lot about where you come from and how you've experienced it and stuff. Because again, it goes back to understanding. If you can't really understand what the person's going through,
Mm-hmm.
it's hard to help them.
Of course.
So I appreciated that a lot about my job, and being able to come from that, being, and that also leads to there's no judgment, because I've been there. I've been in your shoes. I am in your shoes.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that, I find that a lot of their experiences, and seeing the progress, it was also empowering to me. I don't know if that answers your question about
No,
impact, but
It does.
sometimes it was really hard because, you go home and you think about this, especially when there's kids. And I know you and I have talked about it in the past,
Yeah.
on days where it was really hard to kind of go home and disconnect from all of it.
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of people don't know the reality. So I have a lot of friends and family that are now in much bigger, better places. And then when I used to talk about my job and what I did and all of that, I find that no one understands, and I always have to explain it.
Are you
And
talking family?
family, friends, people in general, like
Yeah.
people who don't see this, people who have, better paying jobs, or, people that
They're just disconnected, I
they're just
suppose.
disconnected from reality of the fact that there is people living like this in our society.
Mm-hmm.
And, you and I and the average person, if we're having issues and we need help, we can seek out. We can get a therapist. We can pay for services. What is offered for people of low income is not very much.
Mm-hmm.
So we would provide, 6 to 8 sessions with them, and we're not therapists. So we're just.
But you're having to effectively act like one.
Yeah, kind of.
Or
Yeah.
wear the hat at
Wear
least.
the hat, but we're not by any means.
Yeah.
So we just had to support them the best that we can, and that's sort of all they had.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I kind of felt pretty helpless because everything that I was doing was kind of just band-aids. Like, today you need
There's symptom
food.
treating versus
Exactly.
the
It's like,
cause.
today you need food. Here's a bag of food until next week.
Right.
Today you were suicidal. Let's bring you down from that. But I don't know when the next time. Because, again, I'm not a doctor. I'm not a therapist. I can't prescribe you medication. I can't make sure you're taking your medication. I can't do all of that. So it was
You also
always,
can't be there 24/7.
I can't be there 24/7. So, so that was really hard because I could only do so much with the resources that I had, and then after that they're gone,
Yeah.
and there's not much I can do about it. So our system
Is not quite built.
no, it's not quite built to help a lot. And then if you're talking about women and children who were with in like a bad. So I also did a lot of support groups for women and children, and sometimes it's easy for you and me to say like just get out, but there's so much more to just get out. Where do I go? How do I financially support myself? How do I support my children? My children have to change schools.
It's similar to someone saying just get out.
Yeah.
Is not any different than if you said I'm sad today and I just said, well, stop.
Yeah, exactly. And there's people that do that.
It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. So there's a lot of that. So basically, yeah, the mental health it's really bad, and I feel like, and I think a lot of people that work in the field would agree that there's just not enough support.
Mm-hmm.
There's just really not enough support for people living with mental health. And if you are able, like, you have to pay for it. So
Yeah.
it's not like everybody can afford $150 a session with a therapist. Or
Over the course of multiple months and multiple
years.
Years.
So
in a lot
I
of
can
cases.
tell you, I've been doing therapy for many years, and not ashamed of it. It has helped me. It has guided me. It has supported me through the years, and it helped me get out of a lot of difficult situations. And I think everybody should do it, but not everybody has the opportunity to.
Right.
So.
And I imagine that some of these. So you mentioned that there's 6 to 8 sessions that somebody might get through a service like the ones that you were a part of.
Non-for-profit, yeah.
Yeah, and I feel knowing that there's a finite number almost creates anxiety in of itself.
Yeah,
because you're pressed for saying, oh shit, I better figure this out within the next 6 or 8 sessions, or I better get this together within the next however many sessions I have.
Exactly, and our role in the social service field is not like therapy. So people kind of confuse the two because they would call me and be like, "Are you my therapist?" I'm like, "No, I'm not your therapist." So my role was to, yes, listen and support you, but I can't go in and start exploring your past and your traumas and where the anxiety comes from, or heal the past. My role is solution focused. So it's, where are you now? Is it like, do you need a house? Do you need food? Are your kids registered in school? Do your kids have Christmas gifts? Like things like that. But I would often try to do my role. My people would talk to me about their feelings and their emotions, and I can listen, I can validate, I can support, but I can't fix it. Like I can't.
Right. You can just turn the hat.
Exactly.
In some ways, but
I can validate how difficult it is. I can tell them that I understand, but I'm not the proper person that's going to, actually help them get past their trauma or their fears or
I
anything.
feel one of the challenges with social services for the entirety of the time that it's existed has been that the tool belt only has so many pouches,
Yeah.
and those pouches only have so much space.
Yeah.
And once that space runs out, and once those little clips that you can add to it are done, that's
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
And then it has to escalate, right? It has to go to, for example, a professional.
Exactly.
In this case, maybe a therapist, psychiatrist,
Yeah.
whoever it needs to be.
Yeah.
But like you're saying, they may not necessarily have the opportunity.
Yeah.
And so this is going to be a little bit of a loaded question. Do you find that someone who comes in to speak to you about something that might be on their mind, troubling them, whatever it might be, knowing that you only have a certain amount of time with them, is there ever a sense of almost incompleteness?
Yeah. Often. A lot.
I imagine that that's shaped who you are as well.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways.
Because they would come in and they would tell us these stories, and I've heard really dark stories, which is another thing, because then you have to go home and try to not think about these dark stories,
Yeah.
and how cruel people can be. But yeah, a lot of times they would come in and then they would start their session, they would talk about it, but then something blocks them and then they just can't come back anymore.
Is it because of, like, is it fear? Or what
Sometimes it's fear. Sometimes it's, the time, or a lot of times it was their depression was just too bad that even talking to me was a lot of work. So it was just, they didn't want to do it anymore. Or they say, like, sometimes people will go to 1 or 2 sessions and they'll say, well, this isn't working. But it's not going to work in 1 or 2 sessions. Like, it takes, for people who have experienced severe trauma, like rape, for example. That was something that I've often heard. You're not going to solve that in 1 or 2 sessions. It's going to take years.
Yeah.
So a lot of times they would come, we would do that, and then they wouldn't come back and we wouldn't hear from them. And in my role anyway, we weren't allowed to contact them to be like, we were allowed to try, but we weren't allowed to, like,
You couldn't really
we can't
prescribe
make
it.
them, or yeah. So yeah, it was a lot of, what happened to this person? Where are
Right.
they now? And then sometimes they would come back a couple of months down the road, and sometimes you would never hear from them again. So is that where you're going with your question?
Yeah,
Okay.
I was just curious as to what happens,
Yeah.
because as I said, there's this finite amount of sessions that you're able to
Yeah.
provide, but from the very first session
Yeah.
that this is going to take more than the allotted number
Yeah.
that you have.
And it's going to take someone with more qualifications.
Right.
Yeah.
Jeez.
So it was really hard to just, you can just do what you can with what you had in the time. And sometimes it was, you're dealing with one situation, one crisis of mental health, and then someone else comes in, and you kind of had to, which one was worse?
Right.
And that was really hard. That is really hard to deal with, because everybody's crisis is, to them, it's a crisis.
Yeah.
So us having to kind of decide which one takes priority can be really
So you're
difficult.
taking on the role of pseudo-psychologist, pseudo-psychiatrist, pseudo-medic,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
and triage at
Yeah.
the same time. That's heavy.
But it was great. Like, I honestly, I really loved it, because you would go in, and it wasn't like a job where it was like, you're doing this, A, B, C, D, and you were done. It's kind of like, what's going to happen today, and who do I get to help today?
Right.
So at the end of the day, as much as it was exhausting, it was also a great feeling, because I did get a lot of clients that I got to see through their journey from beginning to
good.
end. And like I said, it was some of the women that I met them right where they would come in with black eye to, I've moved out, I've gotten my own place, I have a job. It's not a great job, but it's a job, and I
Yeah.
can feed my children.
Yeah.
And I've had newcomers show up, and I have nothing, I'm on welfare. This is really hard, because in my country I was a doctor, an engineer, and now you're giving me a can of tuna,
Yeah.
and I'm supposed to eat this and feed my children. I've got off the system. I went back to finish, did the education that I had to do. Now we rented a bigger place instead of subsidized housing, or, they would, yeah.
You're watching them
Yeah.
soar
Exactly.
effectively. Like,
Yeah.
they're going from ground level to
the
being
top.
able to build the life that they want.
Exactly. So
There must be, for all of the ways that there may have been some incompleteness, this might have been a
Yeah.
really, really good balance to that,
yeah,
in terms of giving you the opportunity to really see somebody shine.
exactly. So
That's awesome.
That was great to get to help them. But, having, like I would compare like a lot of in these situations, like I know I talked about the women, but in these situations where it was the newcomers, I find that it was a lot of the men that were struggling more because they're the ones that kind of brought their family, but they were the hardest to kind of not deal with, but I mean
So they were more
they weren't opening
prideful?
up. Yeah, it was their pride, so it was hard to get them to like just say that they're struggling.
Yeah.
But they are, and it almost wanted to make them feel like it's okay to say it. Like,
Yeah.
that's my role. I'm here to help you. But they would stay so strong.
Yeah, I mean, for what it's, I mean, I can relate to that. I can
I get
100%
it, but-
relate to that. I mean, I've gone through that even within the, this has been we haven't caught up in a while, but
Yeah.
this has been the single most challenging the challenging year of my professional career this year. This year's taken me for a fucking ride.
Yeah.
We're talking, it has
Look forward to hearing
whooped
about
my,
it.
oh my God, it's whooped my ass in more ways than I care to admit.
Yeah.
And I look at previous versions of myself and I would have just swallowed this. Like I would have just said, nope, this is what's supposed to happen.
Yeah.
And it's a tough hand that's been dealt and blah, blah, blah. I feel like there would have been this like half victimhood,
Yeah.
like maybe an undertone of half victimhood to it.
Yeah.
But now I look at it and I say, I wanted this, right? Like there was a tremendous amount of opportunity that I saw in front of me. And I knew I wasn't going to get the same opportunity if I went through traditional means of employment or whatever it
Yeah.
would have been. And I knew what I was capable of, and I didn't want to deny my own ambition and all these things. And for all the mistakes that I've made along the way, if I wasn't prepared or if I'm not prepared to take on the risk, then I don't deserve the opportunity.
Yeah.
And so now I can voice it and I can verbalize it in a much more productive way for myself. And I don't really care what somebody else thinks about it.
Yeah.
But I feel the version of me from before who is that prideful guy who's like, no, we're good.
We're good. We're going to survive this.
Yeah, I look at that now and I argue that that was nowhere near as productive for my life, personally,
Yeah.
professionally, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, you name it.
Yeah.
It came nowhere near as close to being as productive as me being able to say, I asked for this.
Yeah.
This accountability is on me.
Yeah.
The same way that when I go through, and I've said this in multiple other sessions when I've had other people sitting across
Yeah.
from me kind of thing, I've said, if I'm going to go through a fall, a fuck up, a misstep, whatever it is, at least I can own it.
Yeah.
At least now I can say this was on me. The win is on me, but at the same time, the loss, the failures, the struggle, it's on me. And I can
Yeah.
wear that as a badge of, I said the word
Yeah.
pride. I can wear that as a badge of honor and a badge
Yeah.
of pride later. But right now, it's a struggle, right?
Yeah.
Verbalizing it is very, very different. And I think being in a place where mentally you can come to grips with it and you can come to terms with it,
Well, I think mental health in men in general is a topic.
that's a whole other
It's
topic.
a whole
yeah.
other topic by itself. Because us women, we're obviously much more open to it. We seek help a lot sooner. And that's just coming from experience. Like I would see for every 9 women, I would see 1 man.
Right.
And it was very much, what do you need? And I'm hungry.
And it was very, very black and white, I
It's
guess.
very black and
Transactional.
white. Exactly. Give me food, give me money to pay my rent so I can make it to the next month. That's it. Whereas
Yeah.
women, they would open up. I've never done a support group for men.
Right.
Like I don't know of any in our, in our society here in Ottawa anyway that really exists for just a men's mental health.
Well, I think it's underserviced because of the potential shame that.
But that's what needs to be.
Yeah,
broken.
it's a stigma.
It's a stigma. Yeah.
It's effectively a stigma that I think has
Yeah.
also crippled the solution.
Yeah.
It's stigmatized to the point that it's crippled the solution.
Yeah.
And the unfortunate reality of it is that for all of the men who don't open up,
Yeah.
they're also the ones who could. I said the word soar earlier. They're the ones who could. They could build such a phenomenal, compelling, incredible story,
For sure.
an incredible life for themselves and for their loved ones, for their family, their
Yeah.
children, whoever.
Yeah.
Most importantly, for themselves. But even the men's group, I think you know a little bit
Yeah,
about the
but
men's
the one-
group that I was
yeah.
running.
Yeah.
That men's group, I saw that all the time, and
Yeah.
it was infuriating. It was such a piss off because you'd sit here and you'd hear these men be able to pull out words that are not a regular part of their vocabulary
Yeah.
when describing something so superficially stupid. But then as soon as it came time to them discussing, hey, you know what? I've got some childhood trauma. I've got this. I
Yeah.
got that. I'm unhappy. And whenever it came to that, all of a sudden they just went full mute.
Yeah.
And it's because I mean, there's no real platform with which they feel comfortable.
Speaking. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm not entirely sure why that is. That's something that's lost even on us,
Yeah.
even on men.
On
It's
your own
lost.
thing.
Yeah, it's not something that I think we've quite figured out yet. But
But no, it definitely needs to. I think that needs to change. And I think we're seeing it now with the way we're raising our children,
Mm-hmm.
not ours, but people are raising their children. It's a lot more open, right? Like we're boys and girls are boys are allowed to talk about their emotions now.
Yeah.
So
I just hope it continues on a path with which
Yeah.
it's not emasculating boys, nor is it trying to. What's the opposite of emasculate? Masculate?
okay.
Right? I don't know. I mean, it shouldn't be trying to masculate or emasculate. I don't know if that's the actual term. But it shouldn't be making a boy feel like less than a boy, and it shouldn't be making a girl feel, or how do I even put that? It's a weird thing.
But boys need to know at a young age that it's okay to be vulnerable.
Yes.
It's okay to cry. It's okay to ask for help. Because
Mm-hmm.
what happens is a lot of times men, they'll only ask for help when it's way too late.
Yeah.
And you've reached a breaking point.
Mhm.
So that's not good.
Yeah, I hear that. You mentioned family a little bit earlier.
Yeah.
And you mentioned that, your parents have kind of come to the
Mm-hmm.
country. There's got to be a cool cultural impact.
Yeah, that was a huge, big part of my life. So my parents met here. So I was my siblings and I were all born here, but my parents held on to especially my mom. My dad did, become more of a Canadian, but my mom, to this day, has held to her traditions, to her roots. So growing up in a Lebanese Catholic family, but trying to survive in a Canadian city, going to school, there's a lot of challenges there.
Right.
A lot of differences. Like you would go into, my mom wasn't a big fan of me going over to my friend's house. It was like, you go to school.
That's a Brown thing, though. I mean,
Yeah, no, but I mean, that's something that, my friends didn't understand. Like, why can't you come over?
Mhm.
And I didn't understand.
I didn't study enough, guys.
Yeah, exactly. Or, being hit with a wooden spoon.
Of course, yeah.
Those are things that some of my friends at school didn't experience, but we did at home.
Yeah.
Or our food. I would bring my lunches to school, and then some of the kids would, what is that? And they don't know what that is. And
It's hummus.
it's hummus, yeah, exactly. But then that kind of made you feel like why am I different? Or
Yeah.
if there was birthday parties or school sleepovers, I wasn't allowed to go to that. So I feel like I did.
That's because there were boys there, though.
Not even. It's just the idea that as a woman, as a girl, you shouldn't be sleeping outside of the house.
Right.
What if my friend had a brother?
Yeah, yeah.
You
of
know
course.
what I mean?
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
There's boys.
So there's boys, yeah.
Outside of these walls, there
There's
are boys.
Yeah, I should not be in this room.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If your parents saw this, oh my God.
It'd not be good.
Actually, it wouldn't be so bad because maybe they wouldn't be able to tell where I'm from.
They would think you're Lebanese.
Potentially.
you're saying?
I get
Probably.
I get Lebanese
All the time.
All the time.
I
so
said that to you when
yeah.
we first met.
Yeah.
But I don't know if that would still not make it right.
No,
though.
it wouldn't because
No.
I'm still male.
You're still male.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's no ring on your finger.
There's no ring.
So yeah,
So we
that's
can't be in the
immediately
same room.
exactly. Immediately, that's blasphemous.
Exactly. Yeah. My mom will love you.
Yeah.
She'll love this thing. But yeah. So yeah, it was really hard, and also there was a lot of. I had an older brother, but my brother he'll hate me if he hears this, but my brother had more privileges than I did
Right.
because he was a boy.
Yeah.
So he was allowed to go out later. He was allowed to have to the sleepovers. He was allowed because he was a boy.
Yeah.
So that caused a lot of frustration, a lot of tension with me and my mom. I love her. But growing up, it was hard because I didn't understand why I was different from the other kids. So my dad was really good at kind of being like the mediator between us,
Between yourself and your mom?
between myself and my mom.
Got
Yeah, because he was a cab driver, so he was really exposed to
He saw
the
this.
Canadian culture. He knew everything. He knew, like, he saw people, whereas my mom worked from home and had like a little daycare of like her friends and family and people she knew. So she didn't really go.
A little more sheltered.
Yeah, she was much more sheltered. Whereas my dad worked like he met different people every day. He made
Yeah.
friends. He went out.
He probably
worked-
saw the widest
Yeah, and he
gamut.
would work like Friday nights, Saturday nights, where people were out and drunk, and
Yeah.
so he saw it all. So he was good at kind of mediating that. But yeah, my mom was definitely more strict, and just even with language, like we would go to different places, and as a child, like I said, the kids that I would see come through my office, they're trying to help their parents. Well, I remember being that kid,
Yeah.
being the kid where, Mom, this is what she's trying to tell you, or like, Mom, you can't do this, or you can't say that, or just last week I had a wedding, and my mom, I decided to take my mom out on a shopping trip. Like I said, Mom, come shopping with me. I need a dress.
Yeah.
So we went to Nordstrom, and I found the dress. I love the dress. So I go to pay, and it's $100, which is nothing. So my mom, being
this is where she would have the most problem. She'd say $100 is not, like, she would whoop your ass if
she
she heard you say
basically
that.
wanted to. She was like in front of the cashier. She's like, she just kept going. I would never pay for that. That's insane. Why are you paying $100 for a dress?
Yeah.
And she was telling the cashier, "Can we have a discount? Can you give us a discount?"
That's the brown way, though.
Exactly. But I was like, as a child, I felt so embarrassed by that.
Yeah.
As a teenager, I was like, that would have killed me. Mortified me, yeah. But now I was looking at my mom, and I was like, "Ugh, I love you, and this is just so you, and it's so funny, and like, I don't care what this cashier thinks. Like, this is who she is." But yeah, it was a lot of going, shopping and stuff. And some of my friends had more like the fancier stuff or whatever, and we didn't. And
Yeah.
I didn't understand why. So yeah, my mom was just
I feel like kids get caught up in that.
Yeah.
Way. Actually, I mean, what am I saying? Kids, everybody.
Yeah.
As easy as it is to argue that
Yeah.
it's just kids, I think it's across the board.
Yeah.
I feel like some of the best clothes I've ever worn has been like the most no-name,
Us too.
like the most
Us too.
ridiculously no-name shit you could possibly find. But it stood the test of time. Like
Yeah.
we're talking, I've hiked in, for example, like like a Nike shirt or something like that.
Yeah.
And it's wrecked by the time I come back
Yeah.
out of that volcano or whatever. And then I've worn like some shitty little like Walmart $4 like
And it
George.
lasts forever.
Yeah, and I'm sitting there like, I just got hit with ash.
Yeah.
And like the shirt, it just kind of slid off the shirt.
Yeah.
And I brushed off the ash and I kept going. I was like,
Yeah.
what the hell? Like,
Exactly.
life hack, baby.
But yeah, so it was things like that, and like now, coming from that and having experienced that, and we were never like, we always had everything that we needed. It wasn't, my parents were able to, they did have to work like long hours and just to provide and stuff. But we had each other. Growing up, we grew up in a neighborhood where everybody was family, right? Like
Right.
we would play outside, like so. But yeah, my mom would never want to spend the money on something that, if there was a $5 shirt or there was a $10 shirt,
She's buying the 5.
we're buying the 5, and you were going to be happy with it.
Yeah. And if you weren't, then you weren't wearing a shirt. I mean,
Exactly.
it was pretty
basically
straightforward.
like that, like
very, very black and white.
yeah, very black and white. So my mom was a very traditional Lebanese woman, and she raised us that way. So, yeah, very Catholic, very by the book, and
Yeah.
so it was hard to even trying to have a boyfriend at 16 when all my friends had boyfriends.
No dice.
No, not
Yeah.
gonna happen. My brother had a girlfriend though.
Yeah, but that's because he's your brother.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
They've got to make sure that he's set up to be the man of the
prepared.
house.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So
he's got to learn that stuff.
yeah. Whereas me, I had to be, and then a few years, even when I was an adult and I bought my own place. Well, that was very hard on my mom,
Right.
which was hard on me because for me it was a great achievement. Like I was 23 when I did it, and I was on my own, and I was super proud of it. And my mom was proud of me. I know she was proud of me, but in her head, you're moving out and you're not married. So
She's worried about your well-being, and your well-being is attached to your marital status oftentimes.
yeah, for her, yeah.
Yeah.
So it was like,
It's not just for her. I think there's brown parents
yeah, I mean,
the
yeah,
world
bro.
round
Yeah,
are
exactly.
sitting
That's
here.
what I mean. So for her, I felt like I disappointed her
Right.
in that, but at the same time made her proud. So it was hard to like,
But I think that's a clash that's like kind of, it comes back to the very premise
yeah.
of this conversation, which
Yeah.
is it's a clash of culture.
exactly.
Right?
And there's a lot of
That would never have happened if you were in Lebanon. Or I shouldn't say never. I'm
No,
not Lebanese. I
probably
can't speak
not.
to it. But I can't imagine that would have been the case over there. So
No.
on one hand, she's sitting here and she's objectively looking at what you've accomplished and saying,
Yeah, I'm proud.
I'm proud of my girl.
Yeah.
On the other hand, she's saying, but this didn't happen.
Yeah.
So it's like this tug of war between her heart versus her brain.
Her brain, exactly.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of times like that in my life that have happened where I'm like, did I disappoint you? Are you proud? I don't know. So yeah, it was a big clash of culture, especially when going into my Canadian friends. their home, and I would see like they would tell each other how much, like my friend would always tell her mom, "I love you, mom. Love you, mom. Love you." Whereas us, it was like that
You're
emotional
lucky.
side.
You're
Yeah,
lucky if you get that.
yeah. You're like you got fed and you're good.
And that's the love.
That's how we love you. So that I was like, oh wow, you tell your mom you love them like every day.
To this day, I still have this might come as a little bit of a shocker, but to this day, I have still never said the words "I love you" to my dad, nor
Wow.
have I ever heard them said
Yeah.
to me from my dad. I've never hugged my dad.
Wow,
I've never shook hands with my dad.
there's a story there.
This is, I mean, the story is
Yeah.
Jesus Christ. I mean, that's a wild story. I mean, this is
Yeah.
part of why I built that men's group, because
Yeah.
I didn't have a strong male presence in my life.
Yeah,
And this isn't to try to be disparaging towards my father. It's more just
Yeah.
to say that's just not who he is. That's just
Yeah.
not. He's very much of the ilk of what you just said, where he did everything. And I know this. I've only kind of come to grips with this in my
Yeah.
adulthood. But my dad did everything he could, and I hated him as
Yeah.
a kid. Hated the guy. Absolutely hated him.
yeah,
But I look at who I am and I say, how could I possibly be proud of who I am if it wasn't for some of the lessons that he did
Yeah,
his best to
exactly.
try to instill in me, right?
Yeah.
And whether I agree with his methods or not doesn't matter.
Yeah,
If I learned the lessons, I learned the lessons. I got to give him some credit for that.
yeah,
And I could call him right now if shit hit the fan and say, oh my God, the world's collapsing around me. Hey, that ash that hit my shoulder from that volcano just burnt through my arm.
Yeah.
Oh my, I don't know how to eat, blah, blah, blah. And he'd show up.
Yeah.
He would do what he could to help.
yeah,
I know that. And that's something that I think I struggled with wanting to accept, I struggled with accepting it way back. And I didn't want to accept it way back.
yeah.
For whatever reason, I was just holding on to
Anger.
every negative emotion you could possibly name.
Yeah.
Anger, rage, contempt, hatred, you name it. Like, and I use those words in a very calculated manner. That's what I felt. It was
Yeah.
to that degree.
Yeah,
And the more and more I've gotten to a point where I try to evaluate things now from the privilege, not from the potential disappointment or upset. I look at it and I say, I had a dad, and he wasn't perfect,
no,
but he did what he could.
Yeah.
There are kids who've grown up without. So if I'm in a position where my dad worked his ass off to try to put food on the table for myself and my mom, and I
Yeah.
can disagree with his methods all I want, but he did what he could.
yeah,
And if I'm not celebrating that, then I'm sitting here and I'm wallowing in something that doesn't deserve my time, let alone my energy, my mind, my heart.
yeah,
So it's a challenging sort of balancing act, I
Yeah.
think. But
yeah. You can relate to
yeah,
everything. I'm
absolutely.
Saying, yeah.
I mean, I still when you mentioned when you said you couldn't date or whatever, I'm laughing because I still remember I got a really good story. Myself and an old flame, Alicia. I'm talking. This is like grade 8. So
Okay.
it's, when I say old flame, I mean it's just kind of
Is
funny.
Alicia gonna see this?
She might. Yeah, she might. Awesome girl. But anyway, so Alicia, she went to a different school back then. I was 2 years older. I was in 2 years older. I was in grade 8. She was in grade 6.
Yeah.
And we finally met up for the first time in front of a Shoppers Drug Mart in the middle of winter. And I fed some bullshit lie to my mom. I was like, oh, Mom, I'm going to see, shout out to Sean Rushlow if Sean's listening. My buddy Sean, one of my oldest friends. Love
Yeah.
this guy. Anyway, that's a whole other story as well. But love you, fam. So Sean lived on a street called Lamoureux. And
Okay.
Lamoureux was right in front of like 10th line
In Orleans,
in
yeah,
Orleans, right? And then there's like what's it called? There's a Shoppers Drug Mart there. There's a Dairy Queen, a Pizza.
Oh, I know exactly what you're talking
You know
about.
what I'm talking about? And then there's 2 gas stations on the
Yeah,
corner, right?
yeah.
So I told my mom, I was like, oh, Mom, I'm going over to Sean's. It was late,
Yeah.
right? We're talking like it was late, 8 or 9 p.m.
Yeah.
in the winter. So it's pitch black outside. And she's like, I'll just drive you. I was like, no, it's okay. It's okay. I want to walk. I'm in grade 8. She called my bluff right out the gate. She knew I was
Yeah.
bullshitting. She just didn't know to what capacity yet,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And I was like, yeah, I'll be back soon. We're just going to play some games. We're going to play some Nintendo, whatever it was.
Yeah.
And so I walk out and it's the first time I'm meeting Alicia, and her friend, I think it was her friend Amelia was there as well. Anyway, so they're both there. I see her for the first time. We hug, kiss on the cheek kind of thing, which was like,
A
that
big
was
no-no.
blasphemous. Yeah.
Yeah.
Here I am as a brown kid who's never spoken to a girl before, but I'm trying to run game on Alicia here, So, so we're in front of the Shoppers Drug Mart, and again, like I said, it's cold out, right? So we're sitting there and we're holding hands and we're talking or whatever, and Alicia like fucks off for a little bit to try to give us some time.
Yeah.
And we're just like pecking, right?
Yeah.
And at one point, like I pulled away and like you could see just like our breath. And I see like this bright light shine through the, like
followed
shine
you.
through the, and I look to my left, and it's a car. So this is the parking lot. You know where that Shoppers is,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
You know which one I'm talking
Yeah.
about? So the Shoppers is like this, and the parking lot is parallel to the Shoppers, but there's a car that's perpendicular.
Oh, wow.
And I look over and I swear to God, like I nearly shit a brick. Like I was sitting there like, oh my God, it's dark out, so I can't see who's in the car. I have no idea what's going on. And the door opens, and my mom gets out, and she's like, "Why are you smoking a cigarette?" Like she yells us at the top of her lungs. I'm like, "What the hell are you talking about, cigarette?" She thought that
Your breath.
just the
Yeah.
you know the breath in the cold air was a cigarette. So I got my ass whooped first for that, and then she saw that Alicia was a girl.
Even worse.
Lucky she didn't see somehow, some way she didn't see the kiss, which I was like, thank God, because
Yeah.
I probably wouldn't be here today.
So did she make you get in the car
Oh
in
yeah,
front of Alicia?
did she ever?
Okay.
But hold on, it gets worse.
Yeah.
So she walks up, about to and she like smacks my hand,
Yeah.
thinking that there's a cigarette in my hand, thinking that I'm hiding it in like a glove or something. Smacks my hand, and then looks over at Alicia and sees that Alicia's a white girl.
Like,
Oh my God, Armageddon.
oh, wow.
Armageddon. Bruce Willis and Ben Affleck didn't do Armageddon. I did. I went through that shit.
You can just imagine what she was thinking.
Oh my God, the way she whooped my ass. Like it was next level.
Yeah.
That verbal beatdown that I got on the way to the house.
Wow.
And then the grounding that I got.
So
Like
you never
repeatedly.
did that again?
It was grounding squared. It was grounds on top of grounds on top of grounds. Of course I did it again. But I mean, it was.
You tried. You improved on.
Yeah,
your-
yeah. I had to up the game at that
Yeah.
point. But I'll never forget the look in her eyes and like the fact that she just zero fucks given about any kind of traffic on
Yeah.
the outside or anything, just pulled right up to the front of the Shoppers and like whipped open the door. Like it was the most dramatic Bollywood scene you could possibly conjure in your head.
That's so funny.
It was like the most angry brown
And
mom.
you never thought that she was gonna follow you?
I mean, I was in grade 8. What did I
Yeah.
care? I was like, no, I'm going to go play Nintendo with Sean. I got this,
Yeah.
you know? She knew Sean. She knew Sean very well. Sean and I were class buddies, well, classmates, but best buddies since like
Yeah.
grade 1. So she knew Sean Rushlow really, really well.
Oh.
We called him Rockwater.
Oh.
Rushlow, right?
And did you know his family too?
I knew his family like passively kind of thing, just
Okay.
because whenever I went over to play or something, I'd see
Oh.
them. I'd always wave at his mom and his dad and his
Oh, okay.
sister. And
Yeah.
but other than that, the important piece was that my mom knew who he was.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
So there was validation, or not validation, but there was validity.
Yeah.
To my story, until there wasn't.
Until there wasn't.
You
Until
know?
she caught you.
Yeah, exactly. Until there absolutely wasn't.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just funny.
No, I was gonna say if you knew his family and if you ever kind of compared like yours to to his, because I assume he was white.
Yeah.
Sean. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why I was asking that
He,
question.
yeah, he did. I mean, he was obviously an example, and so were every other. I was one of maybe 3 or 4 brown kids
Yeah.
in that entire school. I went to Our Lady of Wisdom Catholic school.
Wow. Catholic
So,
school.
Yeah, I went to a Catholic school, and then I went. Or sorry, actually, let's back right up. So I went to Convent Glen Catholic school,
Yeah.
and then I went to Our Lady of Wisdom Catholic school,
Okay.
and then I went to Divine Infant Catholic school, and then I went to St. Peter's Catholic High School.
Wow.
And then I went to St. Matthew's Peter's High School for summer school, and then I went to Sir Will Public School.
It's a lot of.
When I went to Sir Will, oh man, it was a complete 180 because now
Yeah.
the cultural differences that I found of me being a brown kid, an East Indian kid in a predominantly white school,
Yeah.
in a predominantly just Canadian, a very, very typical sort of Canadian
Sir
school.
Will, you mean?
No. I'm talking about all the
All
others.
the other ones, yeah.
But now that entire script was flipped on its head because
Yeah.
when I went to Sir Will, I was able to sit here and speak Hindi with classmates.
Yeah.
And the teachers would give a shit because
Yeah.
they couldn't understand what we were saying.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, I was sitting here like, this was, when we talk about utility belts, oh boy,
Yeah.
I went on a rampage of just neglecting rules and this and that.
It's very different public
Oh,
schools and
yeah.
Catholic schools. But I didn't know that about you, that you
Yeah.
went to Catholic schools.
I went to Catholic schools right up until grade 11.
Oh.
And then I did grade 11 and grade 12 at a
Sir
public
Will.
school. Yeah.
Oh.
So it was a wild ride when I hit that point. And I mean, I still wouldn't change the experience at
Yeah.
all because some of the most influential people in my life have come from those experiences,
Yeah,
from those
for sure.
schools. Same way that, you know, when I've traveled and things like that, there have been really influential people. The same way that for yourself, some of the people that you've had the opportunity to meet
Yeah.
through work, through just your line of work,
Yeah.
period, will have had a very,
sure.
very lasting,
Yeah.
a lifelong impact on you.
Yeah.
And actually, this is an awesome little segue. When you talk about cultural, you know, or not implications, I was going to say implications, but cultural impact
Yeah.
and the differences associated with that. And then we talk about, mental health. You've gone through a really, really interesting journey yourself on a very personal level.
Yeah.
Throughout the course of all of this, I imagine. I don't really know the timeline, so it's going
Yeah.
to be interesting to hear it firsthand. You've only ever really kind of given me bits and pieces of it.
Yeah.
But share a little bit about that.
Of my journey with
weight loss.
With weight loss. Okay, yeah. Well, that kind of, yeah. So I was always like a kind of like a bigger child, and that's a whole other topic. But there was a lot of bullying that happened in school, but luckily I tell myself I'm luckier than other kids because I always had my big brother.
Right. You had the cavalry.
I had my big brother who was completely different than me. My brother was the athlete. He was the star.
Oh, okay.
He was, the one that all the girls wanted. His ego is just gonna, sorry. But that's what it was. So my brother was like, he was always very athletic, and I was really more like the shy little girl. And I was bigger. And so I always was like up and down with my weight as a child. And then the last, like after high school, so this is another topic, but after that, my father passed away. And I was about 21. I was 21, and my father passed away, and that was around the same time that I was in the bad, unhealthy relationship.
Right.
So a lot was happening at that point, and I'm 5'2", and I had reached 170.
Wow.
So I was bigger.
Was this exacerbated by the fact that you lost your dad?
Yeah.
Is that kind of what you're saying? Okay.
Yeah, I lost my dad, and that's a whole other topic. But I was 21, and I just lost my dad, and I didn't know, and there was a whole, a lot that we can talk about there too. But that's sort of where it started, and then I lost my dad. And then my relationship was, I knew I had to get out, but I didn't know how, and I didn't know what to do, and I lost my dad, and I didn't want to also lose my boyfriend. Like that was a lot of loss, but I ended up doing it. I did leave that relationship, and then I decided one day, I was like, not just because I felt like because I wasn't pretty or anything like that. It was more, I just looked at myself and I was like, okay, overall, you need to change something. Like you need to do something. You can't just be having like bagels and ice caps for breakfast and like pizza for lunch and all that kind of stuff, because I started feeling really unhealthy. And then I decided, I was lucky at the time, I still lived at home, so I had a little bit of extra money, but I got myself a trainer, and she really changed my life. So with her, I did about 1.5 years, and I used to be terrified of the gym because of men. Men were there, and I didn't know what I was doing, and everybody was going to laugh at me and stuff. So she taught me so much about like proper technique, about just everything, like how to do cardio versus weights and how to eat and all of that. So I would say the first 3 years was just learning my body, learning what I liked, learning what I didn't. And then I started incorporating yoga the last couple of years, which I love. So it's been, and now I do it for my mental health. So I do it, obviously to stay fit and to stay active. But on days, and you can ask my roommate, she'll tell you, on days where I don't go to the gym in the morning, my anxiety.
Oh, you're a morning gym rat.
You know that.
Oh my God. Yeah, you're right.
That
You're right.
hasn't
I do.
changed.
Yeah.
5:30, 5:30. Yeah. And I just love it. It fuels me. It gives me so much energy for the day. I just feel so happy.
Yeah.
And so that's sort of as a coping strategy, as like something that I know is going to start my day off well. So I go to the gym, I do either my yoga, my running, or just, weights, muscle training.
Yeah.
And then I go about my day. And now it's part of my life. Whereas before, stepping foot into a gym was the most terrifying thing ever.
Yeah.
I would go in and I would just barely do anything. I felt like people were looking at me, people were judging me, people were laughing at me.
Yeah.
That was all in my head. And now I walk in and I feel like I own the gym. Like I'm confident, I know what I'm doing, and even if sometimes someone will tell me, well, correct me, I can take it now. I can be like, oh, thanks. Or some, guys will try to help me. And
That's because they want you, though.
I guess. But
Thirsty.
yeah, maybe. But no, it's been I would say it started my journey with fitness started 2016.
Okay.
So my dad passed away in 2013, and then it took me about 2-3 years, so maybe 2015, to really like, I need to get out of this dark hole and do something about it. And that's when I started the gym, and I started seeing a therapist, and that's a bit of where my life.
This was a complete 180.
It was, but I felt like at that time, it's like when you really hit, I guess you can call it rock bottom, where it's like, it's either I do something or
stay there.
So I had to do something. And not to say that there's been times where I've gone, where my mental health was not good.
Mm-hmm.
And I can just say that now to people, like right now I'm not feeling well. Whereas before it was like to talk about the shame of the mental health. So now the fact that I'm sitting here talking to you about this openly, it's come a long way with it.
Good.
Yeah.
The idea here is that at least I'm glad that this is potentially going to serve as a platform with which you can actually hear yourself talk about it.
Yeah.
Hearing yourself, with these headphones is something that oftentimes people come through here. Yeah. It changes because you get to hear your own pitch, inflection, all the things in your voice.
I feel like I'm telling myself a story.
Yeah. And that's the thing, right? It's the first time that you're hearing yourself speak some of these things out loud. When you don't have these headphones on, when you say something, it's just spoken out into the ether of nothing.
Yeah.
And of course, people perceive it and all these kinds of things. But when you have to hear yourself talk about something that's that deeply meaningful, it'll change not the credibility, but it'll change the amount of weight that you place on it for the better.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure there were days where you didn't feel like getting up and going to the gym. I'm sure there were days that you didn't want to go talk to the therapist. I'm sure there were all these kind of trials and tribulations, but you got through it.
And the gym has showed me a lot about, like, like I said before, I was afraid of just going in. Then I was able to go in. And then not only was I able to go in, but I was able to start chatting with people.
Yeah.
Yoga, things that, like, poses that I never thought I could do that I'm working on, and that now I can. I used to be like, oh my God, how do these people do this?
Mm-hmm.
And just so you know, this morning I ran my first 12K.
Ooh.
Yeah. So that's another big challenge so I used to never run, hated running, started at 5, got to 10. This morning I got to 12.
Got to 12.
Yeah.
Is this for a bigger marathon or something? Like, are you training for something?
So one of my friends at the gym, he's a big runner. Yeah. And recently was going through a little bit of a breakup.
Yeah.
And
I like how you try to dance around that.
Like, I don't know what it is. It was a breakup. And so I would get to the gym sad, like, hadn't slept, emotional, whatever.
He was, or?
No, me. I would get to the gym.
Oh, you're talking about you. Got it.
And I was like, all like, not myself. I was going through the breakup, the post-breakup fun stuff.
Yeah. Fun stuff.
Yeah. And then he's like, Najwa, he's like, you're gonna start running. He's like, you're gonna run with me. He's like, you've always stopped yourself at 5. He's like, why do you do that? I'm like, because that's all I can do. And he's like, no, it's not. And I'm like, yeah, it is.
Because you decided that's all you can do.
I decided that's all I can do. And then slowly, with his help, got from 5 to 6.5 to 8 to 10 and now to 12. And he has, I don't want to say forced, highly encouraged me to sign up for the half marathon in May.
Nice.
So we're gonna
half marathon is 21?
21, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so.
In May. So you've got time.
So I've got time. So that was like something that I actually never, ever thought I would do. I used to, like, running was
it's not your thing.
Not my thing. And now here I am.
Yeah.
So it also taught me a lot about my potential and how I blocked myself a lot.
I'm a big believer in an opinion, whether someone else's or your own, only becomes reality when you accept it.
Yeah.
And so there's really recently I saw this video of a guy. I don't want to say his name because I'm worried that YouTube's going to try to censor this shit.
Yeah.
But anyway, he said, somebody trying to cancel me, the only way that they can cancel me is if I consent. And I heard him say that, and it broke my brain because I loved it.
Yeah.
But the bigger piece of this is that I said, well, it ties into everything.
Yeah.
In terms of our own opinions of ourselves, only become real when we accept them, when we consent to those opinions. Yeah. And so I think the only reason you couldn't run more than 5K is because you kept telling yourself you can't run more than 5K. You hadn't tried it.
I hadn't tried it, and I had just decided that was it.
Yeah.
And then I realized, oh, I can do 6. I can do, we would go outside. Like, he's a guy who's, just a friend I met. We've been friends for a long time. And he's like, you can do more. And I was, no, I can't. And we kind of, like, you could ask it. Like, he was like, I was very adamant. I can't do more.
Yeah.
And then, so yeah.
And then here you are
And here I am.
So you realize from 5 to 12, you've almost 3x'd how much you can run.
Yeah, I know. So the goal is to get to like 15 by like Christmas, which I think is very reasonable.
Okay.
So it's only 3 kilometers more.
So basically, the next time you come in, you're going to be telling us that you're doing like
15.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
You gonna come with me at 5:30?
Oh my God. I remember you asked me once, and I feel like I just looked at you like with a really angry face. I was like, "What?
Are you
like,
insane?
What kind of blasphemy did you just throw my? That's almost as bad as your love for Nutella.
Oh.
Nutella's gross.
Why do you have?
Nutella's
No.
gross.
Why do you have to take it there?
Nutella is Satan's crap.
So we're getting a Nutella-filled croissant after this?
No. If we're getting one, we're only getting it so we can burn it, is what's happening. Okay, so tell you what.
Yeah.
We're going to have you back.
Okay.
And we're going to talk about, we're going to pick up where we left off. We're going to hear a little bit more about how, I know now you're doing something different as far as professional work is concerned.
Yeah.
We'll hear a little bit more about that.
Yeah.
Definitely hear a little bit more about how this run
Yeah.
is coming along. And I call it this run, singular, because you're really just prepping for
That one.
this run.
Yeah.
So we got to talk to you before you get there. And we'll, we were talking about this a little bit before I hit record, but we'll talk about dating.
Yeah, the world of dating.
Yeah, that'll be a
Yeah.
loaded discussion. One that I'm sure we'll have a whole lot of fun with.
Yeah.
So I'm glad you came by. This wasn't so bad, right?
Thank you. No, it was great.
It was easy, straightforward.
Yeah.
You didn't even really have to think too hard about the discussion.
No, I just answered all your questions.
Easy.
Thank you.
Easy as pie. All right, so we'll have you back soon. Thanks so much for
Yes.
doing this.
Thank you.